Hey, how's it going? I'm going to take a wee look at this book, which I just finished this morning, and I'm going to record my thoughts while it's still fresh in my head. The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. I'd never heard of Andrew Miller before, and I was driving over in Argyll from Loch Gilphead to the ferry terminal at Skipness at midnight, having just dropped off some friends of mine in Loch Gilphead, turned on Radio 4, and it was playing a rerun of, what's it called? It's a radio broadcast called Take 4 Books. And it featured an interview with the author Andrew Miller alongside Joanne Harris to discuss his new book as part of the Hay Book Festival. And you know what it's like, maybe you don't, but for me, driving at night with the windscreen wipers on, it's late, you're tired, you've got the radio playing, you're in Scottish scenery, and it's just kind of an idyllic situation to be in. And I was listening to the interview with the author and thinking to myself, that sounds like a book I would never read, but it also sounds very interesting. So I got it out the library and thoroughly enjoyed it. It follows two couples, Bill and Rita, and Eric and Irene. So it's two married couples. Both the women are pregnant and they live next to each other in Somerset, and it's set in the big cold snap that happened in 1963, January 1963, and that got me thinking of the song by New Order, 1963. It won the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction, which seemingly has a cut-off point, and this one just sneaked in. You know, I wouldn't have thought 1963 was necessarily historical fiction, but thinking about it, yeah, I think it probably is. I certainly wasn't around then, so for me it's historical. So these two couples, one of them is an Oxford-educated man who buys a farm, knows nothing about farming, but moves to, I think it's in Somerset, and he moves to this farm which he's bought, and he lives alongside Eric, who is a village doctor, a country doctor, and it basically just follows these two couples as they navigate their way through some tricky relationship issues. I don't know how much to go into without spoiling it, so I'll probably just leave it there and say that the book for me evoked a feeling. It evoked an emotion of, you know, I could picture myself in that scene, and I do particularly enjoy winter myself. I love the darkness of it and the being cosy and warm when it's cold and wet outside, and there's certainly plenty of that. One of the scenes that stands out to me is of Rita, who is Bill's wife, sitting in the kitchen on a cushion on the floor with her back against the aga to get the heat, drinking a cup of tea, smoking fags, and reading a sci-fi novel. And you can tell the author's researched what was at the cinema at the time, what books were on release at the time. There's a book that she's reading which is cited that I looked up, and yeah, you know, it's real. So I just found it mesmerising. You know, I could imagine myself sitting in that kitchen with a cup of tea and a book and a fag. Not that I smoke anymore, but it just evoked a feeling and a place and time. There isn't that much plot, really. It just follows relationships. And there's a surprising scene at one point where the doctor drives his car to someone's house and something goes down, which I won't spoil. I found that scene to be quite surprising. And yeah, it's very much of its place and time. So it's an author I'll be looking out for. His writing style was very evocative and enjoyable. So we've got this phrase here: outside the cold examined her immediately. That's a great verb to describe what the cold can do. And then we've got, it was a place with peaked gables and arched windows that must once have stood on its own in the midst of tended grounds, but possessed now only a single cherry tree, like a slapped girl at the corner of a concrete parking area. Like a slapped girl. It shouldn't work, but it somehow does. On the radio interview, Andrew Miller was asked to pick 3 books that influenced him in his writing of The Land in Winter. And the books he chose were Light Years by James Salter from 1975, Gerald's Party by Robert Coover from 1986, and Daddy's Going A-Hunting by Penelope Mortimer from 1958. I listened to the interview again after I'd finished the book, and I started thinking, oh, I'd love to get all of these influential books, and that's just how my mind works. Whenever I hear about books, I'm like, oh, I have to read them. But actually I don't. I think The Land in Winter was probably enough. So, but if you want to listen to the interview, I'll put a link down below and you can go and check it out. So yeah, I will be looking out for more Andrew Miller for sure. I looked him up online and he's got quite a lot of novels. So it's interesting, I've started with his newest. I'm going to work my way back through some more. So there you go, The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller, which I've given 4 stars.